What's up, everyone? Earlier today on First Takeover at ESPN, there was an interesting segment about a name that's been tossed around quite a bit, Ben Simmons. I've been getting messages from a lot of you about him, so let's break it down exactly how it was discussed and whether it could make sense. They started by pointing out the obvious. If the Lakers, or any team in this position, were to bring him in, it would have to come via trade. That part is clear. But depending on the pieces you'd move and the structure of that trade, Simmons could, in the right context, be a better fit than people might expect right now. Now, one thing that stood out from the discussion was his age. Simmons is still on the right side of 30, just turned 29 this July, which surprises a lot of people who feel like he's been in the league forever. This is a player who, not too long ago, was viewed as a franchise cornerstone. In fact, one of the analysts recalled how, years back, certain voices in sports media were even predicting he'd take over the league. Obviously, that narrative didn't age well, but the talent was always undeniable. The conversation then shifted to what Simmons actually brings at this stage of his career. He's gone from being the guy to being a role player who might only get a veteran minimum deal in today's market. And much of that decline, they said, has been self-inflicted. Mental hurdle, reluctance to shoot, and a tendency to get in his own way. But in the right system, on the right team, his unique skill set could still be extremely valuable. One of the comparisons thrown out was a bigger version of Draymond Green, someone who can guard multiple positions, operate at the 4 or even the 5, and still function as a playmaker or point guard when needed. That's where Simmons' versatility becomes intriguing. In theory, he can slide into any position from 1 through 5. Practically speaking, he's best used at the 4 or 5 because of his size. But here's the sticking point. It's not that he can't shoot from 3, it's that he flat out refuses to take those shots. And that's a real problem in today's game. They pointed out how a player like Russell Westbrook, for example, has poor three-point percentages, but is at least willing to take the shot, which keeps defenses honest. Simmons' refusal to even attempt it allows defenses to completely sag off, clog the paint, and disrupt the team's offensive flow. The panel broke down how this impacts spacing. When Simmons has the ball beyond the arc and defenders know he won't shoot, everyone collapses toward the rim, cutting off lanes for teammates and forcing tougher shots late in the clock. Simply taking the open shot, make or miss, at least forces defenses to guard you, lets your teammates establish rebounding position, and keeps the offense in rhythm. Simmons, by avoiding those looks entirely, limits his own impact on that end of the floor. From there, they explored his ideal role. Without a LeBron James-type presence handling primary playmaking duties, Simmons could thrive as a point forward, even off the bench. He could anchor second-unit offense, facilitate in half-court sets, and create mismatches. But with stars like LeBron and even other ball handlers already in place, that value might be diminished. Defensively, though, the upside is huge, and this was a big focus on First Take. Simmons has the size, length, and agility to legitimately defend all 5 positions when he's locked in. At 6'10" or 6'11", he can hold his ground against bigs, switch onto guards, and thrive in a system that demands constant switching and rotation. Under a coach who values defensive versatility, that's gold. The question becomes whether he can return to that elite defensive form after everything he's been through physically and mentally. And that's where they left it before moving to the next point. Simmons offers incredible defensive flexibility, but the offensive limitations are hard to ignore. The real question for any team, including the Lakers, is whether they need another player who can defend everywhere but could be a liability when the ball is in his hands beyond the paint. Picking up where the First Take crew left off, they asked the big question: do the Lakers really want to bring in another player who's a clear offensive question mark, at least from a shooting standpoint? The comparison came up to someone like Jared Vanderbilt, except they quickly made the point that Simmons, for all his flaws, is still more polished on the offensive end. Even without the 3-ball in his game, Simmons has shown he can get into double figures in scoring. Over his career, he's averaged around 13 points a night, and in his prime years, that was closer to 15. At his best, he flirted with triple-doubles on a regular basis. What the panel emphasized was that if you bring Simmons in at this stage, you're not asking him to be the guy. You're looking for him to fill a bench role, provide a steady 6 points, grab a handful of rebounds, and dish out a few assists in limited minutes. They pointed out that last year he put up about 5 points, 5 boards, and 6 assists. Production that, in the right role, could be exactly what you'd want from him. And because he'd likely be coming in on a veteran minimum deal, the risk is low and the upside is real. If it doesn't work out, he's still a movable salary piece for future trade. From a roster construction angle, adding Simmons could even free you to move other rotation players if needed. His ability to defend multiple positions, play as a small ball 5, and help protect the rim gives you flexibility. He's not going to lead the league in blocked shots, but he can contest and disrupt plays inside. The First Take crew noted that in limited minutes last season, he still averaged about half a block per game. Not elite, but useful, especially when paired with his ability to switch defensively. There was also talk about how you could deploy him offensively. You could run certain sets with Simmons at center, spreading the floor with 4 shooters while he facilitates from the top of the key. He could operate in pick-and-roll actions as a passer, or even as a lob target for someone like Luka Doncic. Not that he's dunking over everyone in sight, but he's capable of finishing above the rim when the opportunity's there. The main takeaway was this: if the Lakers were already a fully built contender and just needed an extra versatile piece for depth, Simmons would make a lot of sense as that cherry on top. But if you're counting on him to push the team into title contention on his own, that's where the skepticism comes in. His impact would depend heavily on how well he plays, how engaged he is defensively, and whether he can stay healthy. In their view, Simmons could make the Lakers better on defense right away, but they framed him more as a supplemental move. The kind of signing you make after pulling off a bigger trade, like if they went out and got someone like Andrew Wiggins, then turned to Simmons to round out the roster. In that scenario, he's extra insurance. Someone who can give you valuable minutes and versatility without costing you much. But as a standalone addition, that's where it gets harder to justify him as the piece that changes everything. Before wrapping that part of the conversation, they looked briefly at his recent numbers. Between his time in Brooklyn and with the Clippers last season, Simmons played 51 games, averaging about 22 minutes per night. His touches and shot attempts were limited, just over 4 field goal attempts per game, which again reinforced the point. You'd be bringing him in for specific, contained responsibilities, not to be an offensive centerpiece. Continuing from the previous points, the analysts dug deeper into Simmons' recent numbers to give a clearer picture of what he might bring if signed. Last season, across his stints with the Clippers and Brooklyn, Simmons appeared in 51 games, averaging about 22 minutes per contest. When you break down his shooting, he only attempted 3 shots per game with the Clippers and about 5 attempts with Brooklyn. Overall, he shot an efficient 52% from the field. But remember, this mainly came from inside the arc since he rarely steps out to shoot threes. On the free throw line, Simmons actually had one of his better seasons, hitting nearly 73% on a very limited 6 attempts, showing some improvement, but still a small sample size. Statistically, he contributed roughly 5 rebounds, close to 6 assists, about a steal per game, half a block, and averaged around 5 points nightly. The panel noted that while per 36-minute stats don't tell the whole story, they can hint at his potential output if given starter-level minutes. Projected across 36, Simmons would be putting up just over 8 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds, about 1.5 steals, and a full block per game. Those numbers underscore his all-around game and defensive impact more than pure scoring, which is why he's still considered a valuable, versatile piece for certain roles. Looking specifically at his numbers with the Clippers, a small sample of 3 field goal attempts per game, he averaged 3 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and half a block. In context, that's exactly the kind of bench production the Lakers might want: solid, efficient, and versatile. Wrapping up the conversation, the First Take analysts emphasized This is still very much a debate. Is Simmons the right fit? Will he buy into a more limited role? Could he bounce back to be a defensive force and a facilitator off the bench? These questions remain open, which is why they invited viewers to weigh in and share their opinion. And of course, the segment ended with the usual reminder. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button to support the content, subscribe to stay updated, and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. That's it for today's deep dive on Ben Simmons and the Lakers' possible off-season moves. Thanks for watching, and until next time.